little fun at the beginning of the program. Number one, I haven't been here since last December, so I can still say Happy New Year. And what an interesting year it's been. Now, allow me a little fun. I don't mean to make light of a difficult situation. But in the time where you haven't seen me, I have not been working in China. I have not been working in Italy. And I really don't like ships. I have turned down opportunities to do my work on cruise ships. But I'm not a cruise ship kind of guy. And somebody told me that right now, Worcester and its greater environment is one of the safest places to be. So I scooted right out here today. And on a more humorous note, 2 months ago when I sent Leslie the information for a program on Songs of Spring, I had no idea she had the power to make it 65 degrees out. For 2 straight days. I thought it would be a forward-looking program, as we still might have some of the white stuff around. Obviously, that's not the case, so let's get busy with Songs of Spring. I see many new people in the group, which is wonderful, so you need to get my disclaimer. This is not a concert. This is an audience participation event. You're invited to be singing along. And I accept singing by any definition you want to give it. And that may be the bad news for the person sitting nearest to you. Having said that, we can get started. This program is simply a collage. All I was looking for was any lyric, anything in a title, anything that I could connect to spring. And you might have guessed, there would be thousands of songs eligible for this program, and I knew I was only going to have time for a couple of dozen, so blame me for the picks that are in the program today. We start on Broadway. In 1959, Ethel Merman's last significant role on Broadway was in the musical Gypsy. And for it, this young newcomer, Stephen Sondheim, partnered with Julie Stein, a veteran who knew Ethel well, and they wrote the score for Gypsy. You probably know Ethel had a reputation for belting out a song a little bit. So if she were with us this afternoon, she would like you doing a good job belting out number 1. Here we go. Things look swell, things look great, gonna have the whole world on play. Starting here, starting now, honey, everything's coming up roses. Clear the decks, clear the tracks, we got nothing to do but relax. Blow a kiss, take a bow, honey, everything's coming up roses. Knives are evening, stand the world on its ear. Set it spinning, that'll be just the beginning. Hands on, light the lights, we got nothing to hit but the heights. Really swell, really great, I can tell, just you wait. That lucky star I talked about is through. Honey, everything's coming up roses for me and for you. I do hope you recognize the names Rodgers and Hammerstein. And if you know their story, you know that almost all of their work was for Broadway. So I'd be preaching to the choir if I reminded you about Oklahoma and Carousel and South Pacific and The King and I and The Sound of Music and others. But Rodgers and Hammerstein wrote once for the movies. And I'm making a big deal about this. Because when they did, in their contract, there was a no California clause. They refused to go out to California. They said, well, we'll write for your movie, but we'll mail you the songs in a manila envelope. So in 1945, they wrote for a movie called State Fair which featured Jeannie Crane and Dick Hames, amongst others. They shipped the songs out, and the only time they went to California was for opening night of the movie. And it turned out that this next song won the Academy Award that year. And that's why I'm making a big deal about it, because there were other songwriters who spent their whole careers writing for movies, hoping that they might get nominated for an Oscar, and really hoping that just maybe they could win one. Well, Rodgers and Hammerstein write once for the movies, and they win the Oscar with number 2 in your book. I'm as restless as a willow in a windstorm. I'm as jumping as a puppet on a string. I'd say that I had spring fever, but I know it isn't spring. I am starry-eyed and vaguely discontented, like a nightingale without a song to sing. Oh, why should I have spring fever when it isn't even spring? I keep wishing I was somewhere else, walking down a strange new street, hearing words that I have never heard from a man I've yet to meet. I'm as busy as a spider spinning daydreams. I'm as giddy as a baby on a swing. I haven't seen a crocus or a rosebud or a robin on a wing, but I feel so gay in a melancholy way that it might as well be spring. It might as well be spring. Speaking about the lack of snow, I have seen daffodils in Marshfield, my hometown. We have croci. Is that the plural of crocus? We have croci that are already croaking. I think the weather has given them a brain freeze. They don't really know what's going on, actually. I don't know if you know this, but Al Jolson put a lot of money in his checking account by singing improperly. If you have ever sung for a high school chorus or a college group or community group or whatever, you probably remember the leaders of those groups saying, now, don't slide from note to note. And don't chew your words. Make sure your consonants are clear when you sing. So the beginning of April showers, with a fair modicum of properness, would be, though April showers may come your way. But if your name is Jolson, it kind of comes out like this. Though April showers may come your way. And later on, so if it's raining, you're not supposed to do that. But I say, what the heck, if Al Jolson could do it, you all can do it for number 3 in your book. Oh, April showers may come your way. They bring off flowers that bloom in May. So if it's raining, have no regrets, because it is a raining rain, you know, it's raining violets. And when you see clouds upon my hills, you soon will see crowds of daffodils. So keep on looking for a bluebird and listening for his song whenever April showers come along. Okay, I gotta get my bearings. Let me see now. The front door is there, which means, is Worcester over there? Downtown? Okay, that means North Chelmsford is over there, right? Anyway, wherever North Chelmsford is, that's where Harry Woods grew up. He was a Massachusetts boy. He and his young wife Barbara moved down to Kingston, Mass, where they were farmers. And when he was finished with the difficult week of work on the farm, he was kind of like a hobbyist musician. He wasn't a songwriter by trade. So at the end of a hard week's work, He sat down at the piano and he came up with song number 4 in your book. Well, it was so well received, they quit farming, went to New York, and Harry Woods was a songwriter for the rest of his life. You know his songs, like Kate Smith's When the Moon Comes Over the Mountain, or a song, Oh, We Ain't Got a Barrel of Money, Maybe We're Ragged and Funny. All right, he had great, great success as a songwriter, but the first one, the one that started him on that journey, number 4 in your book. When the red, red rock comes bobbing along, there'll be no more sobbing when he starts throbbing his own sweet song. Wake up, you sleepy head, get up the bed, cheer up, the sun is red. Oh, I can be happy, what if I do? Now I'm walking through fields of flowers. Rain may glisten, but still I listen for hours and hours. I'm just a kid again, doing what I did again, singing a song. And the red, red robin goes bobbing along. Now in 1927, there was a silly little musical, a stage musical. We weren't calling them Broadway musicals yet. The show was called Good News. And part of the Good News by 3 of the top pop songwriters of the 1920s was embodied in The Best Things in Life Are Free. The moon belongs to everyone. The best things in life are free. The stars belong to everyone. They gleam there for you and me. The flowers that spring, the robins that sing, the sunbeams that shine, they glorious their mind, and love can come to everyone. The best things in life are free. Under Blue Skies is a name almost everyone does recognize. By 1927, Irving Berlin was already mid to later part of his career, having hundreds and now beyond 1,000 songs to his credit, owning his own publishing firm, and he would write songs even when he didn't know what he was writing them for. So when he was married and took a honeymoon in 1925, he and his new young wife Ellen were on a steamship going to London and back for their honeymoon. And leaning against the railing one day, he looked up and what did he see? Blue skies. That's all it took for Irving Berlin to write a song. Maybe some of you have heard my Irving Berlin program. Maybe it's time to bring it again. It is one of the most amazing stories of American songwriting, because Irving Berlin never went to school beyond the 3rd grade. So think about that. With only a 3rd grade education, albeit by the time he became a multi-millionaire, he could afford some private tutoring to compensate for the lack of schooling. But having only a 3rd grade education, he tended to write about what he saw right in front of him. So when he looked up from the deck of the steamship and saw the blue skies, he wrote the song when he got home. He put it in the drawer of his desk. I talk about that drawer a lot when I do my Irving Berlin program. And then 2 years later, he got a call from Belle Baker. She was a good singer, and she was in a stage musical, and she called him and said, "Irving, they haven't got a good enough song for me. Could you drop one by?" So he rummaged through the desk. She thought he was a genius, having written it overnight. She didn't know that he'd written it 2 years earlier. She premiered it. We loved it, and here it is. Smiling at me, nothing but blue skies do I see. Bluebirds singing a song, nothing but bluebirds all day long. Never saw the sun shining so bright, never saw things going so right. Noticing the days hurrying by, when you're in love, my fly. Blue days, all of them gone, nothing but blue skies from now on. So by 1930, 1934, we had talkies with music and speaking, and Bing Crosby gained the first of his 14 Oscar nominations singing this next song. So it was 1934, the movie was She Loves Me Not. Bing was in it, and the she that was loving him not was played by Kitty Carlisle. Now I am going to tell you, this song wasn't really well known as one of Bing's greatest hits. To be honest with you, there was another person in the American musical landscape that may have done more for this song over time. The other person I'm talking about would do it something like this. Jack Benny used to butcher the song on his violin. And people knew the music really well. They may not have ever known the words because they were smiling when Jack Benny was butchering it. Can it be the trees that feel the breeze with rare and magic perfume? Oh no, it isn't the trees, it's love and bloom. Can it be the spring that seems to bring the stars right into my room? Oh no, it isn't the spring, it's love and bloom. My heart was a desert, you planted a seed, and this is the flower of sweet fulfillment. Is it all a dream, the joy supreme that came to us in the bloom? You know it isn't a dream, it's love and bloom. I love telling the story of number 8. So it begins in the 1950s, 1952, with the GI, an American GI, serving in Korea during the Korean conflict. At that time, there was a radio program called the USA Canteen Show that was broadcast to our servicemen and women scattered around the world. The premier performer on that program was Jane Froment. She had become very well known by that time. That's another story for another day. But this GI in Korea wrote a note back to Jane Froment, simply said, Miss Froment, I need to tell you how much we look forward to hearing your program when it's broadcast at our base. She was so moved by the note, she told her 4 songwriting friends whose names are under this song to write her a song that would be especially hopeful. She premiered it on her next broadcast, and she dedicated it to the GI, and he heard it. And he survived the conflict, came home from Korea, and got to meet Jane Froment. The reason I love telling that story is, think about it. Without a note from a muddy trench in Korea, this song would not exist. I believe for every drop of rain that falls, a flower grows. I believe that somewhere in the darkest night, the candle glows. I believe for everyone who goes astray, someone will come to show the way. I believe above the storm, the smallest prayer will still be heard. I believe that someone in the grave somewhere hears every word. And every time I hear a newborn baby cry, or touch a leaf, or see the sky, then I know why I believe. So I wasn't sure I should include number 9 in the program. I mean, I'm a New England kid, and springtime in the Rockies would happen in the more western part of the country. The year was 1923. Mary Hale Woolsey wrote the poem, and then a music teaching friend of hers set it to music, and it was premiered by a group that I had never heard of. Carson Robinson and his Buckaroos. I said, I don't know if people in New England are going to know this song. Then I read on a little further, and I came across the name Rudy Vallée. So people in New England knew well about Rudy Vallée, and he performed the song a little bit later in the 20s. I put it in the program, and everyone in my first audience when I did this program was singing this. When it's springtime in the Rockies, I have come and back to you. Little sweetheart on the mountains, with your bonny eyes of blue. Once again I'll say I love you, while the birds sing all the day. When it's springtime in the Rockies, far away. In every program I do, I include one or two songs that you might not know. I do that on purpose because if you or I think we know every song that was ever written, guess what? You don't. I guarantee you, you don't. So this one was a Rodgers and Hart song, but not one of what we would call their big hits. They wrote for a movie in 1938. You see, they wrote mostly for Broadway, like Rodgers and Hammerstein. But they wrote for a movie in 1938 called I Married an Angel. You probably know that song, I Married an Angel. And in that movie was this song, Spring is Here. Dennis King, Vivian Siegel were in the movie, and a pretty little song that goes like this. Spring is here, why does my heart go dancing? Spring is here, why isn't the waltz entrancing? No desire, no ambition leads me. Maybe it's because nobody needs me. Spring is here, why doesn't the breeze still like me? Stars appear, why doesn't the night invite me? Maybe it's because nobody loves me. Spring is here, I hear. Be careful, I might be setting a trap. Number 11 came from a movie. The movie in 1947 was titled A Date with Judy. Anybody want to guess who starred in the movie? You walked right into the trap. I mean, think about it. If they were going to put Judy Garland in the movie, they would call it A Date with Jane. And Judy Garland would be the star, right? But A Date with Judy had a Jane as the star. And that Jane was Jane Russell. She was in the movie. Now, here comes the interesting part. This song, little connected to spring, was sung twice in the movie. Once near the beginning of the movie, and a second time near the end of the movie by an 18-year-old teenage girl that you were just beginning to hear of because a year earlier she had been in some movie about a horse called National Velvet. Why are you all reacting? Who am I talking about? Elizabeth Taylor. Now please don't think poorly of me. When I think of Elizabeth Taylor, I'm not really thinking of her as a singer. I'm just saying that in all honesty. Wow. But she did sing in the movie, and this was the song. It's a most unusual day. It's a most unusual day. Feel like throwing my worries away. As an old native born Californian would say, it's a most unusual day. It's a most unusual sky. Not a sign of a cloud passing by. And if I want to sing, throw my heart in the rain. It's a most unusual day. There this time from 1932, the heart of the Depression. And boy, even without his education, did he have fun with songwriting. He knew how difficult the Depression was, so he writes in this song, "Let's have another cup of coffee." How much was a cup of coffee during the Depression? A nickel, 5 cents. And then he writes, "Let's have another piece of pie." How much was the piece of pie? 10 cents. Boy, am I glad I wasn't around during the Depression. Do you know how round I would be if I could get a piece of pie for 10 cents? Oh my. I will admit I had a piece of pie on the road just 2 weeks ago for dessert. You know how much the price was? $6.95. But it was a pretty good piece of pie. I did enjoy it. But how clever, Irving Berlin getting John D. Rockefeller, a little bit of everything in number 12. Just around the corner, there's a rainbow in the sky. So let's have another cup of coffee, and let's have another piece of pie. Troubles just a bubble, and the clouds will soon roll by. So let's have another cup of coffee, and let's have another piece of pie. Let a smile be your umbrella, for it's just an April shower. Even John D. Rockefeller is looking for the silver lining. Mr. Herbert Hoover says now's the time to buy. So let's have another cup of coffee, and let's have another piece of pie. When Irving wrote that song, he already knew about this next song. So in the middle of Irving's lyric was, "Let a smile be your umbrella." Don't you think for a minute he didn't get it from number 12? In 1932, that same year, came out this song, and in 1927 came out this song, "Let a Smile Be Your Umbrella," and it's so fascinating because I don't think we'd ever know it if it weren't for a company called Maytag. How many of you, at any point in your life, wherever you might have been living, had a Maytag anything in your house? That's like 90% of the people in the room, right? But, by the way, the company's going strong today. They modernized their appliances. They're still doing it. Maytag is going strong. Anyway, in 1927, the only way Maytag could advertise was one of two routes, either in print, newspaper, magazine, or on the radio. There was no TV. Their ads now are on TV. But on the radio, they had a radio commercial, and this song was written for that radio commercial. So if you know it, it's testimony to how many of your hands went up about having a Maytag whatever. Because Maytag got people's attention, and so did the commercial, and so did this. Just let the smile be your umbrella on a rainy, rainy day. And if your sweetie cries, just tell her that the smile will always pay. Whenever skies are gray, don't worry or fret. The smile will bring the sunshine and you'll never get wet. So let the smile be your umbrella on a rainy, rainy day. One of the older songs in the program this afternoon began as a barbershop singing song in 1905. One of the important barbershop groups in the country at that time was the Empire Quartet. They weren't yet heard on the radio. They hadn't made records. There was no TV, but they would travel around, and people really enjoyed hearing them and this song, which was written for them. The songwriters were actually out of the Midwest because that's where the Empire Quartet was kind of centered. But they would be the ones to give us number 14. In the shade of the old apple tree, with a love in your eyes I could see, with a voice that I heard like a song fact that the program keeps jumping around. Isn't it interesting? A lot of you knew that song. Think about it. It was written in 1905, and you knew it. And you knew it. Many of you knew it. It's amazing how songs come forward through time in the American songbook. This song had a kind of accidental beginning, I call it, in a movie. So in 1950, a movie was made called Underwater, and to be honest with you, the thing the movie was well known for is it was the first use ever of an underwater camera in the making of film. And people knew that. Now, I will also tell you, people were swimming underwater. And one of the people swimming underwater was Jane Russell. I would be preaching to the World War II Veterans Choir by reminding people that Jane Russell had been one of the more popular pinup posters during World War II, but that's another topic. Anyway, with all that going on in the movie was this song, and hardly anybody paid attention to the song. But 3 years later, a good trumpeter by the name of Perez Prado had his own little band, and he made a recording of this song, and because he was of Latin American heritage, he gave it a Latin feel, and boy did it become popular. It's cherry pink and apple blossom wine, when your true lover comes your way. It's cherry pink and apple blossom wine, what will it say? The story goes that once a cherry tree beside an apple tree did grow. In a program called Songs of Summer. I could put it in a program called Songs of Fall, and I could put it in a program called Songs of Winter. I don't know why I chose to put it in Songs of Spring. Maybe it was that lyric, silver white winters that melt into springs. And if you never appreciated the genius of Oscar Hammerstein, go back and reread the lyrics for song number 2. Don't sing the song, just read the lyrics for song number 2 again, and you'll see the genius of a person with the English language and the poetic way he had with words. Now, having said that, this one, my favorite things, came from The Sound of Music. And it was when Maria was being scolded by Mother Abbess for shirking her responsibilities at the Abbey. And she knew she was being scolded, so instead of getting scolded, she distracted Mother Abbess to get the two of them singing about their favorite things. So from The Sound of Music in 1959, number 16 in your book. Raindrops and roses and whiskers on kittens, bright cotton kettles and rumble and mittens, brown penguin packages tied up with string. These are a few of my favorite things. Pink colored ponies and crisp apple strudels, doorbells and sleigh bells and schnitzelwood noodles, wild geese that fly on their wings. These are a few of my favorite things. In white dresses with blue satin sashes, snowflakes that stay on my nose and eyelashes, silver white winters melt into springs. These are a few of my favorite things. When the dawn lights, when the feast sings, and I'm feeling sad, I simply remember my favorite things, and then I will feel so glad. I'm so glad that song's over. It brings back a very bad memory for me. When I was a young kid, I had to earn my allowance. Part of my earning of my allowance was the mowing of the lawn, not with a fancy tractor that you sit on and ride on, not with a mower with an engine that you start and it does almost all the work. I mean the old push mower. You know what I mean? Okay, so one summer when I was about, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, I don't know, I'm mowing in the backyard. I drove that lawnmower right over a yellow jacket's nest. By the time I ran in the house, my mother estimated the number of bee stings was north of 15. And I was not a happy camper. So anytime I sing that song about when the bee stings, it sends a chill up my spine. I'm taken back to that moment in time as a child. Another one of the great, great lyricists of Broadway in particular, although he did also write for film, was Alan Lerner. And he and Frederick Lowe, Fritz as everybody called him, in the early 1940s, they had a tough beginning. They wrote not one, not two, but 3 complete Broadway musicals, and all 3 of them were flops. And I'm just going to tell you, if I and a friend of mine wrote 3 complete Broadway musicals and they were all flops, I'd say, see you later. I'm going to go get a job as an auto mechanic. This Broadway musical thing isn't working. But not for Alan Lerner. He said, oh no, we're going to get it right. And they wrote a 4th, and they got it right. Their 4th musical was Brigadoon. And the first one that people knew really for them. And think of it, if they didn't persevere and do Brigadoon in 1947, then you and I never would have gotten My Fair Lady. We wouldn't have gotten Gigi. We wouldn't have gotten Camelot. What would the world be like without that music? So the persistence of this good little Harvard graduate, Alan Lerner, gives us the Heather on the Hill from Brigadoon. A beautiful little word picture about spring across the pond, so to speak. The mist of May is in the gloaming, and all the clouds are holding still. So take my hand and let's go roaming through the heather on the hill. The morning dew is blinking yonder, his lazy music in the reel, and all I want to do is wander through the heather on the hill. There may be other days as rich and rare, there may be other springs as full and fair, but they won't be the same. They'll come and go, for this I know, that when the mist is in the gloaming, and all the clouds are holding still, if you're not there, I won't go roaming through the heather on the hill. The heather on the hill. Earlier I told you Harry Woods was from North Chelmsford. Here's another one of his hits. In 1927, hits were few and far between, and his friend Morton Dixon said to Harry, Harry, well, let's write an Irish song. Nobody loses money on an Irish song. Now that was true from about 1890 until 1924 or so. But by 1927, the Irish-American songwriting fad had given way to Dixieland and blues and jazz and other things were happening. We still sang the Irish songs, which we'll sing in here all during this upcoming week or two. But if they had been smart, they wouldn't have written, I'm looking over a 4-leaved clover. They would have written, I'm looking over a 3-leaved clover. Because anybody that knows the history of St. Patrick as a bishop know that he used the 3-leaved clover to teach about the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit as he converted hundreds of thousands of pagans to Christianity in Ireland. But more on that story at another time. They wrote 4-leaved clover. I was so curious, I actually looked it up. Because I never had much luck finding 4-leaf clovers. I don't know about you. I actually looked it up, and people who study flowers and things botanical and whatnot have calculated that for every one four-leafed clover, there are 18,000 three-leaved clovers. So I must have been looking at the 17,999 when I was trying to find the four-leaved ones back in the day. I'm looking over a four-leafed clover that I overlooked before. One leaf is sunshine, the second is rain. Third is the roses that grow in the lane. No need explaining. One green maiden is somebody I want more. I'm looking over a four-leaf clover that I've overlooked before. So I know why most of you will know number 19. And it has nothing to do with the year 1929, which is when it was written. It has everything to do with a little movie in 1952. That movie was called Singin' in the Rain. And it's a wonderful little story. Underneath number 19 on the left is the name Arthur Freed, on the right, Herb Brown. In 1929, they were rookie songwriters writing for MGM. Talk about good upward mobility in the job market. By 1952, Arthur Freed had risen through the ranks. He was an executive producer at MGM Films. So he got to choose which movies got made, and he chose to make a movie with his own song in it from 1929. Then he made another pretty good choice by hiring some guy by the name of Gene Kelly to dance in that movie. And you and I forever remember the umbrella, the swinging around the lamppost, the jumping. I know that's how you know it. But keep in mind, Freed and Brown had written the song way back in 1929 for an early movie for MGM. But it really went someplace in 1952. I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling, what a happy again. I'm not big and clouds, so dark up above. The stars in my heart, and I'm ready for love. Let the storm because chase everyone from the place. Come on, the rain, I must smile on my face. I'll walk down the lane with a happy refrain, and singing, just singing in the rain. So now we get the oldest song in this program this afternoon. That is no misprint. 1884 was the year of origin for While Strolling Through the Park One Day. I like conducting what I call social experiments. Before I play a note of it, before I sing a word of it, how many of you think you know the song While Strolling Through the Park One Day? Holy bejeepers, I didn't know you guys were that old. Oh my gosh. 1884. No records, no radio, no nothing. How does that happen, right? Well, I'll tell you one of the reasons it happened. It did so well when it first came out with these words. There were 11 more versions of it before copyrights came into place. So you're going to sing it with me as While Strolling Through the Park One Day. There is a version While Strolling Through the Woods One Afternoon. Another one While Strolling on the Beach One Day. You see, anything before 1893, the date of international copyright, you today can take this music, put your own words, while strolling through Briarwood this afternoon. And And you can put whatever you want in there. You can put the names of people, you can put important things going on at Briarwood, and you can publish it. I'm just going to tell you the published music business has gone by the boards now. So I'm not really encouraging that. You'd have to get it on the digital airwaves so people could download your song digitally. And then you might do well with your Briarwood version. Now, in 1884, songwriting was different. So I need to prepare you for the fact, if you look at the fourth and fifth lines, a smile was all she gave to me. Right after that was something that in the 1800s we called a little piano ditty, because upright pianos were becoming all the rage, and they wanted people to know how important pianos were, so composers put little piano ditties into songs. It's pretty obvious, but take a little break after you sing the word me, and take another little break after you sing the word be in the next line, and you'll get it, you'll get it. While strolling through the park one day, in the merry, merry month of May, I was taken by surprise by a pair of foggy eyes, in a moment my poor heart was stole away. A smile was all she gave to me. Of course, we were as happy as can be. Is different, and what a great thing to have that song be followed by a song from the 1960s. So basically 100 years of separation between While Strolling Through the Park One Day, and listen to the songwriting stylistic change as we go back to Broadway. You see, in 1960 when Lerner and Loewe did Camelot, Fritz Loewe was having problems with heart difficulties. He retired after Camelot. Alan Lerner wasn't ready to retire. He wanted to go on, and he partnered with Burton Lane, a young man who had been mentored by George Gershwin back in the day, and became a very good composer. And the two of them created the score for the musical On a Clear Day. And I will tell you that outside of the musical, this song became very prominent for a young new gal in just beginning to be known as somebody by the name of Barbra Streisand. So if you think you know this song, you might have heard it in a variety of places. Now, remember, contrast this with this. On a clear day, rise and round blue, and you'll see who you are. On a clear day, how it will astound you, that the love will be outshines every star. You'll feel part of every moment, see a joy. You can hear from far and near the world you've never heard before. And on a clear day, on that clear day, you can see forever and ever and ever and evermore. So the difference wasn't so much the beat, the difference was in the harmonies. The older songs had really like 3 chords to them, you know, just like, and then 3 chords, all it took to do While Strolling Through the Park One Day. I've never counted them, maybe 35 or 40 chords in this song, but they were modern jazz chords. I'll give you a little theory lesson because I've got an extra minute here. Sounds that might make your ears say, ouch. Whenever you know how to write those sounds and your ears don't say ouch, you're a composer that knows what they're doing. Because ordinarily this hurts. But when you surround it with, you don't hear it. Same thing. So some of you grew up hearing songs like, what's the name of that song? Misty, good for you. Okay. Sorry, a little music theory lesson we snuck in there. If you tell me you've never heard number 22, I'm going to ask you what planet you've been living on. I mean, I did mention the name Judy Garland earlier in the movie A Date with Judy, which she was not in. But she was in The Wizard of Oz in 1938. I hope you know the story. She was only 18, I think 17, about to be 18, or 18, about to be 19, right in there. And she was cast, and nobody knew her. But when the producer and the director found out how good she was, late in the making of the movie, this song was not in the original plan for the movie. It had the other ones, We're Off to See the Wizard and Follow the Yellow Brick Road and all that good stuff. But this one was an 11th hour edition when the director said to Harburg and Arlen, said, you know, Judy's good. Write us another song that she can sing. So they scurried to put this together. To be honest with you, Harold Arlen already had the music written, sitting on his desk, but hadn't intended it for the movie. And then Yip Harburg put words to it, and Judy sang it, and guess what happened? It won the Academy Award. Pretty good 11th hour addition into the score of The Wizard of Oz, don't you think? Especially that ending, it's kind of nifty. So I'm going to reach for my water bottle, and then I come back to the front of the piano, and I say to you again, the year beside number 23 is 1929. 1929. And I'm going to be honest, most of us don't remember it from then. If I ask you how or why you might know this song, the answer that I can get from some people after I coat my vocal cords with water So I know how many of you were watching late night television. because you probably saw him sing that on the Johnny Carson Tonight Show. And if you didn't actually see him sing it on the program, you probably saw it on the news the next day, because people were talking about it. Now, not only was Tiny Tim, and by the way, I want to set the record straight. That wasn't his real name. And he was actually a very fine singer. That's not the voice that he used. Tiny Tim toured, particularly up and down the East Coast, from Maine to Florida, and would give great concerts and programs that would go well into the evening as he sang well beyond the scheduled time to please his audiences, and he was a good singer. But he did sing that way on the Johnny Carson Tonight Show, and then a year later, he came back to the Johnny Carson Show, and what did he do? Got married. Okay, here's your long-term memory test. What was her name?
Vicky.
Oh, people actually got it. Miss Vicky. Miss Vicky was that person who married Tiny Tim. I say this with a wry smile on my face. If I were thinking of getting married, which I'm probably not, it probably wouldn't be on the Johnny Carson Tonight Show. Well, it couldn't be. Johnny Carson's not doing it. But I mean, I wouldn't do it on one of those late night TV shows. I don't think. So anyway, enough on Tiny Tim. But in 1929, we had the first movie with Kodachrome color film in it. Now, we'd had black and white, but it was a big deal. Now, the original color movies weren't Technicolor like we have, or the modern version of it with computerized color, but it was color, and it was important, so why not have a scene in the movie be a field full of tulips of different color? What a great, colorful image to put in one of the first movies ever with color in the film, right? Tiptoe to the window, by the window, that's where I'll be. Come tiptoe through the tulips with me. Tiptoe from your pillow to the shadow of the willow tree. Come tiptoe through the tulips with me. Meet me in flowers where spring will keep the showers away. And if I kiss you in the garden, in the moonlight, will you pardon me? Come tiptoe through the tulips with me. Mind you, I have no intention of wanting to rule the world. From my point of view, the people that are already trying to do that are having enough difficulty without me getting involved. But if I could, I would find a way to translate the lyrics of song number 24 into all the languages of the world and airdrop them out so every world leader all around the world could read the words and pay attention to them. Now, a friend of mine said, don't you understand that when you fly over Syria, your plane is going to get shot down? And I said, well, maybe I won't go through with my idea of airdropping out the lyrics. Maybe I'll just have to get them hand-delivered by people that are going to go to that area. But anyway, in 1963, the second of two musicals came to America from London, where Charles Dickens was a pretty renowned fellow. And two musicals had been made in England. The first one, Oliver Twist, was the book. The musical was Oliver. The second musical was based on the Pickwick Papers, and the musical was simply called Pickwick. Now, Pickwick was not as well known as Oliver here in the States. Did not do as well as Oliver did here in the States. But I heard this song then, and I fell in love with it. And I don't want to rule the world, but I want people to pay attention to this. If I rule the world, every day would be the first day of spring. Every heart would have a new song to sing, and we'd sing of the joy every morning would bring. If I rule the world, every man would be as free as a bird. Every voice would be a voice to be heard. For me, for my years of teaching with modern teenagers, so to speak, they used to have this expression that I really didn't like. They'd say, "Oh, Mr. Craig, it's a no-brainer." You ever heard that? Your grandkids or your great-grand, "Oh, it's a no-brainer." Meaning, you don't really, I kind of knew the song that I wanted to end the program on. It was a song that was used at the end of an amazing career. And that would be the career of Louis Armstrong. So I don't know about you, but I was lucky. This young boy, orphaned at the age of 6, adopted by an immigrant family whose last name was Kamofsky. And they put a little trumpet in his hands and he became a pretty darn good trumpet player. Playing his way up the Mississippi River on riverboats to Chicago, then east to New York City, fame spreading not just nationwide, but worldwide with Louis Armstrong and his All-Stars by the 1940s. In 1967, Louis was going to retire, live in his home in Brooklyn where he would sit on the door stoop in his shorts and his t-shirt, and he would give little trumpets to kids in the neighborhood and teach them how to play as he sat there in the last couple of years of his life. An amazing life story. So he's going to retire in 1967, but he's going to take one more, what they call farewell tour, a tour around the world. And he said to his friends, George Weiss and Bob Feely, "Write me a good song that I can sing on my farewell tour." And they gave him the song, "What a Wonderful World." And in that beautiful, gravelly, textured voice, Louis Armstrong made the song popular then. It's been covered, as we say in the music business, by lots of other people since then. So I don't know about you, but I was really lucky. When I was a young kid, Mom and Dad would save up some money, and they took my sister and I to a place in Framingham called the Monticello. Anybody ever go there? Oh, I'm preaching to the choir, aren't I? A pink building up on a hill, right? And I remember sitting there seeing Louis Armstrong. I was a young kid, and those cheeks would puff out like this when he'd play the trumpet. His white handkerchief, he would mop his brow. He had that beautiful smile and that, as I say, gravelly textured voice. I don't know, maybe I'll have to coat my vocal cords once again. You never know what can happen when you're doing this song. Here it is. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands saying, "How do you do?" They're really saying, "I love you." I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They're learning much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Ever since I was that kid at the Monticello, I've been trying to sing like Louis Armstrong. It's kind of fun. I saw him 2 more times. I saw him once when I was in college. He was near enough by, so some friends and I wanted to go, and we went and saw him. And then I saw him again on his farewell tour in 1967. An absolutely amazing contributor to the American musical landscape.